Can you tell us who you are and when and where you were born?
Torrie was born here in Beamsville, October of 1969.
And what county were you a junior farmer member of?
Niagara.
Okay, and how did you first get involved in junior farmers?
I think it was a friend. I was in 4-H prior to that, and a friend of mine at University of Guelph invited me out to a meeting, and went from there.
So you started with the University of Guelph?
No, I was never in the... I went to some activities of the University of Guelph Club, but I never was a member of their club. I became a member once I guess, came back to Niagara after university. What
were your first activities at the University of Guelph?
As a junior farmer, or of the, I think most of it was a little bit of square dancing, although I was never really I never really seemed to be able to square dance actively, but yeah, I think that was probably most of the social levels of it.
And what was your first activity when you got back to Niagara and joined there?
We did meetings quite regularly, and our meetings were usually, I don't know if you call it activity-based or location-based. We'd have meetings at different farms in the area, different events. Just excuse me 1 second. Don't need to answer that. So, we would go to greenhouses, processing plants, maple syrup. Whatever seemed to be of interest to our members. We'd have a meeting, like a tour and education, and a meeting there at the same time.
How many clubs were there at the time in Niagara?
I was only aware of one. We had members from Niagara Falls. I was from Beamsville. We had one from, I forget where it was, Canfield, Wellandport, kind of all in that. Yeah, we were pretty much all of Niagara for our membership.
And how many were there in the club?
Maybe 10 or a dozen total members, but there was really about maybe 5 that were like active every meeting. There was a few that just came out occasionally, but yeah, there was probably 5 or 6 of us that came to most meetings.
What were some of the activities, like you've already touched on, what were some of the other activities you took part of?
We did some at the provincial level as well, so whatever the province was doing, we did some, I think we went bowling once or twice, but typically it was more agriculture related. We'd go to, as I said, to farms, processing. We toured the cherry plant in Vineland. I think we went to a meat processing once. Yeah, different agriculturally related businesses.
And what sort of activities did Niagara Junior Farmers do to help better the community?
We had a fundraiser at the fall fairs, the one in Beamsville, which was the Lincoln Fair, and the West Lincoln Fair up at Smithville, and we would raise money there, and each year we would do a different community event. Sometimes it was community care, and basically with just a monetary donation. We didn't really do a lot of like volunteer work with community organizations.
And after a while, you became active provincially.
I was the provincial director for several years. I'm not sure how many, maybe 3 or 4, 5. I'm not sure, something like that.
Do you remember how you became the provincial director for Niagara?
I was elected. I guess in theory, there was the previous provincial director. She kind of encouraged me to come out to a few meetings, and I had a car, and I guess in theory I had time, so I was able to go. Some of our other members had full-time job, so it was hard to get days off to go to provincial events, and they didn't have a car that was dependable to travel across the province. So so the criteria kind of narrowed it down, and as some would say, I didn't say no at the right time. So but it was a good experience, and I'm glad I did it, and yeah, so.
Do you remember who was provincial president when you were on the board?
There was several. Brent Barton was one. Murray Shaw was one. Kelly Allen, I think, was the outgoing president when I started.
And what were each of these presidents like? What did they each bring that was different to the Junior Farmers Association of Ontario?
Oh, they were all very, very different. Murray was probably more of your kind of figurehead as a president. Brent Barton was very hands-on, very community oriented. He seemed to want to get all the members involved, which was good. Kelly Allen was the outgoing president, so I didn't really have any. I think he maybe chaired the last meeting, or his last meeting was my first meeting, so I don't really have any too many comments about him. Keith Emery, he was quite good as well. He seemed to be quite active and take part in a lot of things, and encourage members to do the same and promote the organization. So I think that's the only ones that I can remember. There might have been another one when I was there, but it doesn't come to mind. So
Was there still a secretary-treasurer when you were involved?
yes, when I started, I think her name was Diane, and she was
Diane Martin?
that sounds right, yes. And she was paid for by OMAF, I believe. And then when I was there, that funding was reduced substantially. And not only did we lose the office space that was provided by OMAF, we lost the secretary, we lost, at one time I think they allowed us to, it seemed obscure, but they would allow us to bill them for the postage every other month. So one month you couldn't charge them the postage, the next month you could. So if it was something not time sensitive, you would delay it, So our newsletters came out when OMAF covered the postage and nothing else came out that month, or at least, like, you follow what I'm saying, which seemed very awkward, but that was the way it went. I don't quite understand anybody's logic for doing that, but it was a means of maybe OMAF letting us know how much we valued them. I didn't really understand, but it seemed kind of awkward.
So what were the discussions at the board level? What were the discussions around this?
Well, how we would continue to function as an organization without the support of OMAF, or OMAFRA. Those names have changed. I think it was OMAF when I started, and then it became OMAFRA, and as they say, the raw disappears and comes back. So, and I don't know which time was which. Yeah, without funding of the organization, we really never knew how it would function without that, whether it would continue or not continue. We had to find office space. We changed, I think, to Farm Credit for a while. They gave us office space either for free or at a very, very minimal cost. We had different secretaries. I don't think any of them were completely voluntary, but they certainly weren't full-time, and certainly not paid as a full-time person. Yeah, sometimes you'd phone, and of course the phone wouldn't get answered because there was no staff person there, and the executive would, if they were in the area, they would staff the office themselves, but again, it wasn't consistent, and that was really the the beginning of the reduction in membership. I think when I started there was maybe 10 or 12,000 members across the province. It was big, and then it dropped to maybe 2 when I was finished as a PD, maybe 1,500 to 2,000, somewhere in there. It dropped quite substantially, and I'm just going by memory with the numbers, so I don't know if that's right, but there was a big membership when I started, and it dropped significantly over those 3, 4, 5 years. So yeah.
What were some of the potential solutions thrown around at the board meeting?
Well, I don't know if there was any solutions. They were all options. But as I said, you know, we had volunteer secretaries. We found office space where it was in other agricultural organizations where it was either free or a nominal cost. You know, big cuts to the budget as far as what the organization could spend on all of its activities. You know, I think we were given a grant from we were given a grant from OMAF as well as the secretary's position, and that was, I'm not sure that was eliminated completely, but it was substantially reduced. You know, when I was PD, so it was we did some marketing campaigns to try and increase the membership, but we also had to increase the membership fees, and of course, you know, it's hard to increase your membership when you're also increasing the membership fee. You know, it's one thing when you have a nominal membership fee, it's another one when you have to have a membership fee that sustains the organization, and it's you need it, but it reduces your number of members, so I'm not sure whether you're money ahead at the end of the game if you have, you know, 1,000 members at $100 or 100 members at $10. You're really not gaining. So yes, you have less administration, but you also have less members, and with less members, then less work gets done, and less, like, the reason the organization exists is kind of neutered, if you follow what I'm saying. So
was there a reduction or change in the programs that were offered by junior farmers because of this?
Yeah, there was a reduction, and I don't think they reduced the number of activities, but they were made smaller and less extravagant. I'm not sure extravagant is the right word, but it you know, you certainly could tell that there was less money there spent on each activity, and some of the more expensive activities were just not done. You'd still have, you know, winter games and summer and all those things, but there would be less at each event. So,
were there other challenges or issues that junior farmers faced as well?
Well, other than funding and memberships reducing, you know, every organization has little issues that exist all the time, but I don't remember anything being a topic at every meeting other than those two. There was, you know, things that would come up for, you know, you'd discuss it, and, you know, where we were going to have our events, and, you know, where the zone activities would be, and I think it was zone 7, one of the zones up north, was there was not enough members up there to maintain its status, so that was another discussion topic. And I think now is there 6 zones now?
Zone 6, the one up north, there's no other clubs for them.
Okay, and does it exist now or no?
In theory.
In theory, okay. Yeah, well, it did exist when I started, but it kind of stopped existing during my time or very shortly afterwards.
What were the last clubs that had membership? Where were they from up there?
There was a girl that came down from Thunder Bay frequently. I think her name was Regina. And again, that was another issue because she'd have to fly down because it was like a 20-hour drive, and who pays, you know, or who pays her mileage? And you know, when we had funding from OMAF, her expenses would be covered, and that's a long way to travel, and that was probably the beginning of the end of Northern Ontario, was when OMAF cut that funding. Then they really couldn't take part, and it kind of ended it for them. So club names, I can't say as I remember the club names, but I do remember the one girl that would come down. I think it was Thunder Bay. So.
What do you think was your most significant contribution to Junior Farmers?
I'm not sure whether I did contribute anything significant or not. I wasn't a highly active member. I was there. I did attend most of the meetings, and I did bring a different perspective. Most junior farmers was you know, grains, oil seeds, field crops, animals, which is most of agriculture throughout Ontario. But coming from Niagara in the fruit belt, I think there was another person or two that sometimes had apples, but I was really the only one that had tender fruit. So that was a different perspective and different thoughts, but I'm not sure how significant that is. It's just uniqueness to me and the area I come from. So.
Is there any experiences or wild experiences or different funny stories you'd like to share about your time in Junior Farmers?
Well, there was lots of things that happened. I'm not sure whether this is worth sharing or not, but I did go to a dance, and I still have a toe that's not quite straight because it got a high heel right on the end of it, and it just didn't quite grow back the way it was supposed to. So, but yeah, there was lots of enjoyable times. Whether they stick out specifically in my memory is yeah, I don't think there was anything specific that really stands out. But
you were telling me earlier about your experience curling. Do you want
to
re-go over that?
I've curled once. I learned to curl, and I stopped curling all in the same evening. It was at a January PD meeting in Eastern Ontario, and that was their event was curling, and yeah, I quite happily took part, and now I know how to curl. So all of 2 hours worth or whatever it was, but so long as the rock got to the end of the ice, I was happy. So I certainly didn't really have any control as to where it went or what it hit when it got there, but as long as it got to the end, that was good. So yeah, it was an interesting experience, and it's always nice to try new activities, and at least you can say you've done it once. So
were there any funny stories from PD meetings? Any funny events?
I was the sheriff one. I don't know if I was sheriff for 1 year or just one meeting, and I forget what the requirements were, but I wasn't supposed to pick on individuals specifically. So I came up with a ticket for everybody. Everybody at the PD meeting got a ticket, and I had to be quite ingenious for some people as to create something that they did that was worthy of getting a ticket, you know, but that was a long time ago. Some people, of course, did get a few multiple tickets, but I'm pretty sure everybody got at least one. And at that time, everybody who got a ticket had to put a coin in the hat, and it was a fundraiser. And I think they used that money to buy the president a gift at the end of the year. I'm I'm not sure, but I think that was part of it. They used it for something anyway. So yeah, that was kind of. I don't remember one meeting though. But you think if I was sheriff, I should have done it the whole season. But somehow I only remember ticketing everybody for one meeting. So and then they had rules as to what times I was allowed to ticket and what times I wasn't allowed to ticket and different things like that. But it was an enjoyable experience. But giving everybody a ticket was quite a challenge. So.
How do you feel that Junior Farmers changed you as a person?
Well, we change continuously. What can be attributed to Junior Farmers is I think it kind of encouraged me to join more agricultural organizations. Or maybe organizations in general. Maybe I shouldn't limit it to agriculture. Now, those who would make the effort to join Junior Farmers would also be the ones that would make an effort to become in organizations as an adult as well. But I've been quite active in the Niagara Peninsula Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association, and that may have occurred naturally. It may not have. Who's to say? I was also with the Ontario Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association, and I'm on the Fresh Grape Growers Marketing Board. And I think the biggest skill set that I learned at Junior Farmers is Robert's rules and how to run a meeting and how to deal with motions and amendments to motions. I think probably the Junior Farmers Provincial Association, at some time in my experience there, probably had to look up every rule in the book at one time or another, and you somehow sort of remember that that process. None of us were necessarily experts at Robert's rules, and you things would happen at different times, and they wouldn't necessarily know how to do it properly. Amendments to motions seem to be the biggest issue that I remember coming up, multiple times. And in the organizations that I belong to now, it seems to be a lot. I wouldn't say they're a lot less formal, but it's probably there's less directors, and we tend to come more to a consensus than to. You still have your votes, but it's you don't have nearly as many opinions, and it seems to be a little bit easier to. Not that I'm chairing the meeting, but it's easier for the people who are chair to run the meeting than when you have, if we have all of the counties, there was probably 30 or 40 PDs at any one PD meeting, and they all come with different opinions and thoughts, and some people are quite adamant that their concern needs to get addressed, and sometimes it does, but sometimes it's only their county that it affects. So the province really didn't want to make a policy for one county. If it affected multiple counties, then you would, and these people would be adamant that you have to make a policy, and you kind of go like, it's not really worthwhile, but they kept making it up, and then you'd have to come up with a policy and then defeat it, which was kind of counterproductive, but at least you went through the process, and those people were reluctantly satisfied that at least it came up and was discussed, and then not included, or in some cases it was included and adopted by the association, but yeah, it was quite a experience learning to deal with varying and very different opinions. So,
how much did membership cost? Do you remember?
in Niagara we had two levels of membership. One was for just Niagara members, and then I think we had provincial members. It was not a lot. I'm thinking it was maybe $10 or $15 or $20. Might have been $20. I don't remember. It did go up when I was there. I don't remember what it specifically what it started at and what it finished at, but I kind of think $20 maybe comes to mind for an annual membership.
What all constituted meeting the requirements for affiliation?
Oh, there was quite a bit there. You had to have a number of meetings. You had to have a meeting learning about meetings, how to run a meeting. Community involvement was another thing. Education was another thing. And of course, as PD, I had to fill out these affiliation requirement books, which was sometimes a challenge, especially my first year, because we didn't necessarily, we knew that it had to occur, but we really didn't plan our meeting activities around the affiliation requirement. So sometimes you'd have to create a affiliation requirement that wasn't really quite done the way one would do it if you knew you were doing it to stay affiliated. So yeah, but we did seem to maintain our affiliation, so I guess it was successful. Some clubs of course didn't, but most of them seemed to find a way to do it. So yeah.
You talked about the decreasing in membership. Mm-hmm. Was it clubs folding, or was it people just not returning to their clubs as individuals?
There were some clubs that folded, as I spoke about the whole zone in the north. I think that whole zone kind of collapsed, but mostly it was just, Niagara was always a small club, and it seemed to kind of maintain itself. It did eventually kind of die, and I think it's re-resurrected now. But some of the clubs, especially in eastern Ontario and maybe in the heart of farmland in Ontario, like the Waterloo, Oxford, kind of that area, some of those clubs would have members with 75, 80 people, maybe 100 people or more, and they reduced their members, and in some counties they would have multiple clubs. Niagara, that may have occurred at different times, but it was only one club when I was involved. And instead of having 3 clubs, they would just go down to 1 club per county. I imagine there was some counties that didn't exist, but I can't really specifically name any counties that folded at the time, but I imagine there was. So,
in your opinion, what is the importance of having a program like Junior Farmers?
I think it is good for 2 things. One, it helps the community, and 2, I kind of think the most important is that it helps the individual develop as a person, and then you get those people to continue on in organizations later on and can be a competent contributing member. No matter what you do, you have to start somewhere, and if you've already belonged to an organization that is well run and you understand how a meeting functions, it's much easier to become a member of the marketing board or the OFA or Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association and start contributing right away. Whereas if you hadn't had that experience, you could still become a member, but without the meeting experience and how a meeting functions, you don't become a contributing member nearly as quickly and as easily, and then sometimes you feel a bit left out, and one of two things: you would either be not wanting to continue, or you wouldn't be encouraged to continue next year. So and it's not that you're a bad or incompetent person. It's just you didn't have the experience and didn't feel strong enough to contribute and take part. So
What was the relationship like between the province and the provincial government while all this activity was happening and things were changing?
well, I was never involved with the negotiations for funding. We did have, and this was more so when I was with 4-H, we had I think it was a rural organizational specialist at Vineland, and there was a OMAF office out of Fenwick at the time too. The Fenwick office is now closed, and it closed about that time. But they had a staff person to help keep things going and coordinated here. Well, that staff person was still existed, but their duties were changed. And at the province, that they were cutting a lot of funding, typically across the board at the time, and I don't, I don't really think relations were strained as such, but they had their position, we had ours, and how you get funding, you seem to have to be a little bit creative. So
What have you done with yourself since leaving Junior Farmers?
well, that's like 15 years ago. I'm here at the farm. I'm still here. As I said, I've become quite active with the Niagara Peninsula Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association. I'm on the Fresh Grape Growers Marketing Board now. I'm also a director at the Niagara North OFA, so in that sense, I'm fairly active in the, volunteer position world. We've kind of changed the way the farm operates a little bit. Nothing to do really with Junior Farmers, more so from a marketing and competition rationale. The farm is still here and still functioning. So yeah, is that what you were looking for? Did you want me to go into a different area?
What you've done with yourself, where you've grown.
Yeah. No, we have a few exchange students here too. Junior Farmers, the exchange. I never went anywhere, but we did host some. What do they call them?
Delegates.
Delegates. Yes, I just about said diplomats, and I said that's not quite quite the right word, but yes. So they had another word too for them. I forget what it was. Anyway, but yeah. So that was a good experience, and yeah, we still, occasionally do have a exchange student here for a period in the summer. So yeah.
And if you could say something to a Junior Farmer member today, what would you tell them?
We take part. I think the organization, I assume, is still well run and well functioning, and there's no sense in being a member who just sits there. Be a member and take part and get out of it what you can. Even if it's something that happens once, like my curling, it's still an experience that you will always have. So yeah.
Is there any answers you'd like to give for questions I forgot to ask?
Probably. What comes to mind, I'm not sure.
Any stories you'd like to add on?
I'm not really a big storyteller spontaneously like this. They come up in conversation, but to come up, there was you know, we'd go to meetings, and when you're traveling across the province, it was always nice to carpool with people, and you'd have stories about, you know, whoever you were driving with, and getting stuck in the weather, and meetings canceled because of weather or delayed or what have you, and yeah, anything specific that comes to mind, my mind has to be prompted in order to get those to come out, and it just they come out at obscure times, but when you're forced to think of one, it doesn't actually seem to happen. So yeah. But yeah, I remember once I think we were on the 401, and I said, Jack, get out and walk faster. And then somebody in the back seat said, did you want to try it? And I said, well, I'm not sure. So, yeah, we were certainly not moving very fast. So, but as soon as you get out of the car and start walking, of course, then the traffic is going to pick up and you're going to go again. But, yeah, I forget. I don't remember who was in the car. Might have been, I think she was from Guelph. I'm going to say maybe Erin McDuff, but I don't know. We were going to a meeting in, seemed like all the meetings seemed to be in Eastern, well, not all of them, but a significant amount of them were in Eastern Ontario, because it was quite a, well, I kind of consider anything east of Toronto Eastern Ontario, so that kind of represents like half the province. So, yeah, we did have meetings. We had one in Petrolia after Murray Shaw was president. That was a cold night, and but it was January. It was supposed to be cold there in January, so yeah. I think that's, sure more will come up, but that's what come up right away. So
thank you for this.
Yeah, very good.